We are recording. So thank you everyone for being here. Feel free to drop any questions or anything in the chat, and I will turn it over to Emily.
Great. Thank you, Yossi. It's really great to see a lot of familiar faces. So today we're going to do a Q&A with Maple and with April, and then we'll turn it over to you folks to talk through your questions. As we get started, I did want to say that we want to recognize the ambiguity of some of the terms we'll use today: corporate sponsor or corporate sponsorships, and those traditionally come out of the marketing side of a local, national, or regional business. And then you have on the other side corporate giving or even corporate social responsibility, which is typically from the foundation or giving side of a business. But today, I think we'll use some of these terms interchangeably, realizing that some of these businesses use these terms interchangeably. And we'd also want to recognize that, you know, whether we're talking about corporate sponsorship or whether we're talking about corporate giving, it's really all about, just like with foundation funding, it's about aligning your what you're offering with the mission of that particular department. So to get us started, we wanted to kind of ask our experts here about their approach to the relationship between their news organization and corporate funding. So I'm going to start off with Maple. Maple, like a lot of folks here today with independent news orgs, you've started out with a base of foundation funding, and then more recently you've identified a gap of working with corporations, whether that's a sponsorship or corporate funding. What has pushed you to close this gap, and how are you prepping your team to get ready to engage with the business sector?
Yeah, for sure. So just to kind of put everything in context, so this is year 5 for Block Club. And for about the first 3 years, we were over 70% reader funded. So most of our revenue came from subscriptions. And thanks to 2 large grants, investments that we received over the past 2 years, we're not relying heavily on one source of revenue. So about 45% of our revenue comes from foundations, and then about 40% comes from our subscribers. And then the remaining 15% of our revenue comes from individual donations, advertising, and merchandise sales. And so we've known for quite some time that generating revenue from corporate giving is a missed opportunity. But like so many newsrooms across the country and in the ecosystem, we've been at limited capacity or bandwidth. And we just simply didn't have the resources to rely or focus heavily in this area. So eventually, over the past few months, we've been able to make some new hires, our VP of Revenue and our Operations Coordinator, which has allowed me to start focusing more on the corporate giving sector. And we're also working with the consultant company that is also helping us with our corporate giving plans and needs. So now that we have this shift in our newsroom, now we're able to just kind of move forward in that trajectory of building our corporate giving plan.
Great. Thank you, Maple. And April, a little bit further down the road, you at the Texas Tribune, you own an established corporate revenue business that you started with the launch of the Trib 14 years ago. Wondering about some lessons along the way with how you approach a corporate sponsor, specifically how you think about editorial independence or transparency or the value proposition.
Yeah, so I'll go back 14 years ago when I first joined the Tribune. I wasn't here when we started. I came 6 months later because we really needed an audience. And we were really looking to continue to diversify our revenue streams for long-term sustainability. We had foundation support, but at the time, we really thought, you know, foundations would help you get started, but they weren't going to invest in, you know, long-term sustainability. It was almost like they put us in the boat and they shoved us off to sea and waved, good luck, right? And when Evan brought me on board, he really thought that corporate would be kind of the foundation of our revenues, just because the numbers are greater, right? That you can ebb and flow. A foundation grant sometimes is a year in development. You have to wait to be invited, where we could generate revenue faster. And then also more diversified revenue within. And so when we started, we didn't even have a media kit. We didn't have IAB ads on the site. We literally started from scratch. And Evan said to me, we have this corporate sponsorship program and it's $2,500 for like an annual opportunity. And I was like, great. And in the back of my head, I was thinking, but I've joined June 10th. And I've told him I'm going to bring in $600,000 this first year, and that's going to be really difficult. So I pivoted really quickly from corporate sponsorships to creating what I called content sponsorships, and really starting to connect, right, with our high quality editorial product. And then I kept it as an annual. In regards to, the big guys would think, well, that's nothing, we can do that, but it would still allow smaller businesses to participate as well. And so really, as we've evolved over the last 14 years, we still offer an annual. It's a lot more than 2,500. It's up to 8,000 now. But for most, it just becomes the foundation. And then we're able to build flights on top of that. Some of my high level takeaways that I'd like to share is when you have the opportunity, right, to meet with a prospect, I say ask very open-ended questions and really listen, because they're going to tell you exactly what they need and what they want to buy. And if you're listening, you're going to pick up on cues. And if you've heard me speak before, you know that I say keep everything simple. And when I'm listening, I'm really listening for four things. I'm listening to, what are they trying to achieve? What are their goals and initiatives? Who are their target audiences? And that's plural, right? Because at the Tribune, we're all about policy and politics. And if they say the Capitol, that's that's an important core part of our overall audience. But I want to bring engaged constituents along with it, so I can sell, right, the universe of our audience. And so that's why I always kind of like audiences and kind of lead with that. And then we also need to know what's the start and end date of the campaign and what's the budget. And with that, I can take all of that, sit back and think about what they're trying to achieve, the target audience, and what do I have in that time period. And then what I do is I don't start from scratch, but I tailor all of our assets and elements that fit. And then I produce an outline and I share it back to them for consideration. The other thing too is if a client asks you to write 3 proposals, only write 1, right? Because if they're saying, do you have 25, a 15, and a 10, I can start with the 25, but it's not really my responsibility, right, to curate and to edit their program. I would rather bring them on board, so you're continuing to learn what they're comfortable with, what assets they have, and by allowing them to help you really customize it, then they're going to have greater ownership. In terms of, when I also say too, is strive to be, to create partnerships, right, win-win, and to put yourself on the team with them. And they're going to rely on you more and more. And that also just helps the relationship grow. In regards to editorial independence, it's funny, I've heard this come up a couple of times, and I really haven't thought about it. But I was raised at a publication where I spent over 20 years, where it was church and state, editorial and business, completely independent. And that's a hard line. And that's a hard line that I will never cross over. I love our editorial products. I know they are high quality, award-winning, and I want to win with that, right? And I'm never going to cross the line. I'm never going to go to editorial and represent a client. I may give my clients or my prospects a list of newsroom people that they should build a relationship with, right? And I encourage them to do that. But the work that we do together, the client owns it. They set the timing, right? The creative, the messaging, and everything. And so when I look at our editorial content, when I'm thinking especially about prospecting, it's like, what are we covering, right? And does this client or prospect, how do they connect with that content? Is the content just the glue that gets to their targeted audiences? And in a perfect world, it's really both. And that's another thing, when you're listening, you're gonna hear and you're gonna pick up those cues as well. And I think, did you ask me about value proposition? Was that the last thing?
Yes.
Okay, great. Again, I come back to creating win-win partnerships, really, because I mean, that's really, you just want these long-term relationships, so that, you know, they're always thinking about you and your product and really what you can offer. And sometimes that starts with a conversation, but you know that you become an extension of their team when they ask you a marketing or advertising question that has nothing to do with your own product. And so that's kind of like the score for me. When someone asks me, for example, about arena signage or something like that. But it's really exciting, and I think it's really rewarding to work with our clients and our sponsors to create really greater awareness and success.
That's great. Thank you. And Maple, did you want to weigh in on the value proposition?
Yeah, if I may, just quickly, just to kind of piggyback off of what April was saying, when I think about value proposition, I always think about this question. There's funding out there, but then at what cost will you get it? Just as a funder, a donor, corporate sponsor will ask you if a newsroom fits into their portfolio. Newsrooms should be asking the same thing. And I just always think that it's a disservice to yourself, your staff, your organization, if you don't ask how these supporters can be an asset to your portfolio and your mission. Your value proposition is your value proposition, and newsrooms shouldn't waver on that just to get funding.
Yeah, that's the win-win that April was talking about as well. Thank you, Maple. I want to turn our attention to some real world examples. Maple, we know that Block Club is focusing some of your earliest corporate relationship work around events. So would love if you could talk to why events seem to be an ideal product to take to corporate funders, you know, sort of where you're at in that process, what you're planning, and maybe some early lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, Emily, this is very new for us. And one of the things we've heard just on a regular basis, whether that be from our peers or whomever we've talked to in this space, is that it's very similar to the strategies and relationship building that we have in the foundation world. As I mentioned earlier, this is year 5 for Block Club. And this year, we're going to celebrate our 5-year anniversary by hosting our first annual gala in June, and we'll be honoring some of our community leaders, individuals, and businesses that have made an impact in our neighborhoods. And so here's kind of been our strategy or our plans so far when it comes to corporate giving. So we're working with our consultant team to help us create, they've helped us create a 1-page document. And this includes all of our sponsorship opportunities. And we've also, they've also helped us to create a sponsorship slide deck, and that's more detailed. So it includes our mission, our work, and our sponsorship levels. And in just this week, everybody, we've just started applying for corporate sponsorships and also asking for in-kind donations, because we'll also have a silent auction. And so our consultants really encouraged us to compile a list of our partners. So whether that's in advertising, our major donors, any relationship that we've built through storytelling, different businesses, to really go to these folks and ask them for in-kind donations, or even if there's a way for them to help us connect the dots. If they're not the person we should be talking to, then who should we be talking to? And so, again, we're really in the early stages of this process, and we're just really hopeful that the plans that we've put in place will be successful. So after this gala, feel free to reach out and see if the strategies that we've put in place have worked, but we're very, very hopeful. So we've got our plan in place, and we're just looking forward to what's in store and what lies ahead.
Congrats to you, Maple. Are you able to share with this group the name of the consultancy you're working with?
Yes. So this consultant firm is called Swell and Good. And our VP of Revenue, she just started back in September, and she came from the Chicago Sun-Times. So she had a relationship with them previously. And so now they're working with Block Club, and they've been great, to say the least.
That's great.
I want to jump in real quick on events. Events was part of the Tribune's original business blueprint, and each year we produce and present about 50 events plus the big Texas Tribune Festival. And so when you're thinking about corporate sponsors, an event is the perfect opportunity to really put them in your landscape and create face-to-face engagement. I mean, yes, we're going to have greater reach via our digital, platforms and other assets we have, but there's nothing better than representing your brand at an event. And then we really have a lot of fun, and we look to our corporate sponsors to really enhance the event experience. And beyond that, Maple brought up in-kind. The Tribune, I always look for in-kind as well to offset any cash expenditures. That's not really limited just to events. I mean, we also do in-kind partnerships where the partner would prefer viewable ad impressions or e-newsletter placements. But it does make a difference to your bottom line. And so I would encourage y'all to build those type of relationships as well. I love it when it's cash and in kind, and that's kind of what we strive for. But at the end, if it offsets, again, cash expenditures, we'll want to go for it.
Thanks, April. I'd love to turn your attention, April, to the difference between a corporate sponsor and a corporate giving department. So at the RevLab, we do a monthly meeting where we bring together the business side of the Texas Tribune as well as the editorial side, and sort of imagine 6 months down the road, what are things that are percolating. So throwing out an example for you, say you hear about a new series, whether that's an editorial series, an event series, or maybe it's both. How do you think about getting started, who to approach, the marketing department, the corporate giving, et cetera? What are your first?
I love our RevDev meetings. We actually started doing those pre-pandemic and then came back to them coming together face to face in our conference room. And it's really the business and development side to just listen and ask questions about anything that we can plan. I mean, being in the news business, things happen, all the time anyway. And it's shocking to me how many people say, can you send me your editorial calendar? And I'm thinking myself, yeah, I wish we could predict the news, right? But what Emily's talking about are really more projects or series. And like she said, sometimes a project becomes an event and that's included, and that's even better because it makes the offerings more comprehensive. But I love this meeting, and I love learning. And the second that something's out there, my head starts to fill with all kinds of lists, right? So the first list is, and I pre-sell. Okay. And I pre-sell series, and I don't do exclusives, and I try to bring as many people to the party in advance, because sometimes, you may get 6 months of a runway, and sometimes you may get 6 days. And so a lot of times I will encourage a sponsor just knowing the history and the quality of our projects and our events to put money in their budget for us. And then we sit and wait. So that's my first list. My first list is who has already said yes, and where does this opportunity align with what I know they need. And then the flip is, I'm going to use this opportunity to prospect and meet new corporate sponsors as well. So I use a couple different things. One is, what's the topic, right? Who's involved? Is it a collaboration? If it's an event, is it a panelist? Where is this taking place, right? Because a project could be on drought, and it may be for us in West Texas. So I'll immediately go West Texas, right? Or it may be an event in Houston. So I let kind of whatever they're bringing me kind of steer my mind first. And then, I like Mabel said, I start talking to people. I would try to find the right point of contacts. I want to enter every single door at an organization that I possibly can, because you never know when one of those champions is going to be in the room in a meeting and be able, right, to encourage the others to invest with you. And so, I mean, I'm going back to your original question about, is it a corporate sponsor, I mean, for me, because we are policy and politics, typically I will try to enter government relations or public affairs, PR. Sometimes it's community relations. Sometimes it is advertising and marketing. And that's the best because that's really where the big bucks are. But a lot of times, it's not just one door, it's many doors. And again, coming back to creating that partnership, the more people, right, that at a certain company, then just going to be the bigger and better partnership. I also think about if someone is saying yes, right, who are their competitors, right? That will be my next list. Or it may be even a different angle. And we try to look at different opportunities from all different points of view. One of my favorite stories is there is a healthcare system here in Austin, and they're one of the ones that put away money for us in events. And they always tell me it has to be in our service area, it has to be healthcare, and call us. And they put together, we'll do 5 events this year. And so like literally they would be my first call. I've got this, are you in or out? Yes, no. Yes, great. One time though, and this just kind of tells you about kind of think big picture, is we decided to do an event with the athletic director at the University of Texas at Austin. And it was about policy and student athletes and, pay and, all those kinds of things. St. David's typically would not be in my first list, but I do know from being at the stadium that St. David's Healthcare is the official healthcare of UT Athletics. And so I thought, I called Denise and I said, okay, it's in your service area. It's not healthcare related. However, you've invested a fortune here. Here's an opportunity to put that to work in front of a completely different audience. And she said, yes, we're in. So don't always think just traditionally, right? Or in these kind of verticals, kind of go diagonal and horizontal too, just to bring more and more people and money, right, to fund the project series or the event.
It's great. Follow where the dollars are, right?
Yes.
So this is our last question, and then we'll open it up for all of you to ask these folks anything. For you both, doing your thinking 6 months ahead, what does your team look like? What are some trends you're spotting? What are some relationships you'd like to build? And Maple, once you get past the gala event, but what does your 6-month future look like as far as corporate giving, corporate sponsorships, and how you'd like to continue to grow your teams and your relationships?
So looking ahead 6 months, we want to be just like the Texas Tribune. Yes. No, but on a serious note though, we do hope that we have someone dedicated to this space. So whether that's me or we do have funds set aside to hire somebody in this space. So somebody really focused in this area. And just overarching here, Block Club does an amazing job at hosting events, panel discussions, and various conversations. And all of our events are typically free. So looking ahead, we're certainly hoping that we can generate revenue on a regular basis from corporate sponsorships. And we're also hoping from hosting this gala that we'll be able to build and establish more relationships with corporate sponsors. And then I think the biggest thing is having the opportunity to learn what we're doing right from this upcoming event and then learning from those mistakes. I mean, we do have a long road ahead, but we're certainly hoping that, the things that the tools, the resources, just everything as a whole that we're learning from this upcoming event that we can learn, work with, and move forward.
That's great. Well said. Same question to you, April.
So 6 months from now, hopefully we'll be out of the Texas legislative session, and I will really be focused on sponsorships and activations at the Big Texas Tribune Festival. I do know that there is a life and many sponsors that do not participate in festival, and so it's almost like I have 2 different lives. One of the things that I want to do and remember to do is, as your site, for example, texastribune.org, as it evolves, I need to relook at that site. And I need to look at monetizing different areas beyond a banner, okay? because we're already creating that content. So how can I come back and use it? If it's a widget, could it say supported by AT&T or powered by Lloyd, right? And start to weave other opportunities into these big comprehensive programs. Last week, we had a meeting where a person on our audience team shared more information about our text platform. Our text platform was born during a winter storm when people did not have access to the internet, and we were trying to share resourceful information with them. We have since pivoted. We still use it for crisis communications, but we found that the audience really likes to hear from us about high-level things that are happening each week. Originally, I asked, can a sponsor support this? And I got a hard no. We have a new CEO, so I asked the question again. And she said, yeah, let's test it. So we're about to test that, which will be interesting. I can monetize, I can sponsor every asset that we have except for social. And so all of y'all on the room, I'm putting you all on the Texas Tribune team, right? Is that I want to figure out how to include sponsors professionally in a way, right, that it does not, there's no confusion. I want sponsors messaging to be designated, but I want to be able to monetize those editorial channels as well. So I'm really trying to do that. And then I'll also do a call out. This is so self-serving. I can't believe I'm gonna do it, but I am. I'm actually looking to build a sales team here at the Texas Tribune. And so right now I'm looking for one person, but hopefully by the end of the year, it's two, and that we really build more of a network across the state and then also across the country. Our brand deserves it, and it's really time for us to move forward and take a lot of that pressure off of my shoulders too at the same time.
Thank you, guys. Yossi, I'm going to turn it over to you to see. I think we have some questions.
Yes, absolutely. And we can share April's email if anyone wants to apply for a job at the Texas Tribune. There are a handful, so I'll get to everyone, but from Lisa Snowden in the chat, do either of you have suggestions for how to downsize some of the suggestions for outlets who might not yet have staff working on only bringing in revenue or are really just getting started on this?
So here's what I would say, because we were just in that same position. You have to, and I mean, obviously this is dependent upon each newsroom. Each newsroom is different, but for us, we really could not focus on the corporate giving space because we just didn't have the bandwidth or capacity to do it. That was one of the things that unfortunately, even though we knew that it was a missed opportunity and there was a gap in a way for us to receive money, it was just something we could not tackle. And it goes back to that question, at what point or at what stake do you put your staff, in because you're trying to get money, and it just doesn't work in that space. So we only focused on what was at hand, which was development, our subscriptions, and we tackled a little bit of major gifts as best as we could, but unfortunately we could not delve into the world of corporate sponsorships because we just didn't have the capacity. So my best advice is don't stretch yourself thin or your staff thin if you don't have the means or the capacity to focus in that area at this time.
So, and I would say, I mean, just looking back, I mean, that first year, my goal was $600,000. Today it's 5 million. And so there's a big run, right, from point to point. However, I would say go back and again, try to create some packages that become why not. They start a conversation and, you can build from there. If you've heard me speak before, when I talk to groups like this and I'm talking about all these different things we do and I see that their eyes are glazing over, I kind of stop and say, okay, your people are asked to speak at other people's events. Are you asking for a speaking fee? And they kind of go, no. And I said, I mean, that's a simple question. I mean, it's a simple statement. The Texas Tribune speaking fee is $5,000. And what I say, and this is what will help you start to build relationships and not make this transactional, is, and you can say, and the speaking fee comes with marketing benefits. And so I've created it like a package where they get, a 90-day program, and it includes viewable ad banners on the site and email messaging. And the reason why I do that is because that gives me 90 days, right, to get to know the people on their marketing team or their comms team. And typically what happens is, and we're showing them along the way, we're reporting, we put you in the brief, or this is how your, ads are doing on the site. It gives you that runway to continue the conversation after the 90 days. Now, some people will say, we don't have $5,000 for a speaking fee. Peace. What do you have, right? And so they come back to me and I always say, well, I need to ask my team member, because it's the value of their time. They have to prepare and they're out of the newsroom, right? But most of the time I will encourage the speaker to do it, because it also they're representing our brand. The speaking fee is paid to your organization. It's not paid to the speaker. And again, you can roll it into those marketing. And sometimes even they may say, well, we don't have a budget for speaking fees, but we do have a marketing budget, and they can pay the speaking fee because you know what I'm saying? It all kind of combines. So look for ways like that to start, simple, and just let that really develop. And then again, you're going to start doing more complex and more comprehensive opportunities, as the opportunities grow.
Terrific. Thank you. I love that framing as almost self-service in a sense, that you can set it and let it run. Dan, I see you have a hand up. If you want to jump in with a question, go ahead, and then we'll get to some more in the chat, or if anyone wants to ask a question out loud, feel free to raise your hand also.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate y'all putting this together. So I'm probably not as far along as a lot of the people here in this room. We're a real small company. And my ad salesman retired in November, so I get to do ad sales now too. Yay! So I'm learning about that life, and I noticed that corporations are aware of who we are, because I get their press releases all the time. Publix, Kroger, these big companies, but I can't ever get them to the table to just even meet. Like, I would consider that a success at this point. Getting somebody in a room just to talk about ads. It's like they send it to us and they only want to engage on that piece of it, whether we run it or not. And then when we're trying to get them to a meet, they're ghosting us. So how do you get past that? Because they obviously see some value in what we do, or they wouldn't be contacting us. But how do we get over that hurdle as a small company to get their attention, to be like, hey, we're worth spending money on too?
Yeah, you may not be asking for the meeting with the right person. The person that's in the press release probably doesn't have anything to do with the ad decisions. So I say do a little research and see if you can open other doors. One of the things when I was working with Cityside, they were just looking to launch corporate advertising. And so they had a lot of individuals that were already investing, right, in supporting Cityside. And I said, look, they're your champions right there. Go back, look at their email addresses. And are any of them identifying with business organizations, corporations that you want to do business with? You may start there.
Yeah, I can't ever seem to figure out who there's always somebody in a company that controls the ad spend. There's always somebody that has the power, yay or nay. I can never figure out who that person is. I figured the most logical place to start would be with the people who keep sending me these press releases, but I can't ever crack the code on these things.
Yeah. A lot of times too, if I can't get, and again, I keep saying this like a broken record, we're politics and policy. Policy, yes. Better Texas, yes. Politics, no. So a lot of times if I tried to work with the advertising or marketing director directly, they see politics and they're like, no way. So a lot of times I'll start way up. I'll reach out to the executive director, the president, the CEO, and I start there.
How do you find their number? How do you find their email?
I am online all the time.
Yeah, you just sleep it out.
Sometimes, a lot of time it's on their site. You go to their About Us page, and the really good ones also have their email addresses there.
Yeah.
So you can also go to LinkedIn. right? You might see that you have people in common. And you may ask it that way. I mean, I do a million trillion different things. That's for sure.
And then I would just add to the latter portion of what April was saying, always look at your peers, whether that's in a newsroom space or, you know, if you've written a story on an organization or a business that may have a partnership with some of these heavy hitters or larger organizations. I always use my resources. If I see one person that has a relationship or is in common with Kroger, then I'm all over that saying, hey, can you make an introduction? Here's what we're trying to do. So I always suggest using your resources and those that you know to make a connection or introduction for you to get in the back door.
Yeah, a lot of times too, you have to remember too, this is a partnership. These are relationships. It can't always be about you trying to sell people stuff. So I look for other opportunities. Maybe it's something that, like you said, we've written about. And I may, you know, I may just copy and paste it, send it to him in case you missed this. Or, you know, even in one of our newsletters, there's this famous thing is the last word. And so a lot of times I'll just forward that and I'll say, it's always great to have the last word. And then I'll place that there. And then I will tell them, you know, this communication was distributed to 68,720 somebody opt-in subscribers. And I just leave it at that. So you start kind of chipping, or if you see, like HEB, our state's largest grocer, just won the National Grocer of the Year award. And so I just, you know, I saw that and I sent it to everybody I knew at HEB that just said, hats off and congratulations, you know, hoorah for all of us. And, you know, those kinds of things, I mean, that's just like a chip. So once you start doing all of that, then maybe they will be more interested in meeting with you as well.
April, I'm wondering if you could talk to about inviting folks to events, even the folks that are ghosting you or maybe not engaging with you.
Yeah, I love that. So our events are amazing. If I can get people to an event, all sales are off, because our events really sell themselves. And it's about the content, it's about the panelists, it's about the quality. It's also about the audience and the networking, the other people that they get to meet. So two things. If I ask someone, you know, to support an event and they say no, I go ahead and invite them. Or I say, I always want you to be aware. I want them in the room, right? And if I see that maybe they're not in the room, I mean, we record all of our events. And so I will send it to them. You know, I missed you. You know, I think you'd be really interested in this conversation. And oh, by the way, Texas 2036 was mentioned at this minute mark. Okay. So again, I'm using every single thing I can to try to engage them. And again, if I can get them to come, I mean, the Tribune really sells itself. And then it's really just about going back to needs and goals and what's your purpose and what are those intersections and how can we enhance the event experience based on, you know, what this corporation stands for or what they're trying to communicate. And that's a lot of fun. That's where you can get creative too.
Excellent. Another related question here from Teresa Whipple in the chat. What advice would you have for local community-based publications with a smaller audience as a selling point for corporate giving? Is it realistic to expect we would receive the same type of funding when maybe not the same scale as, say, a Texas Tribune or a statewide audience or a big city like Chicago?
Well, I mean, to me, it's not really about the size of the audience, it's the quality. School finance reform in Texas is a really big issue. There are 75 probably big thought leaders. If I could have those 75 people in the room, I can monetize the shit out of it, right? Because they're the right people. So don't get caught up in masses. I mean, we don't have masses. I mean, we can't make a living doing programmatic. I mean, and I don't really want to. It's really about how resourceful, right, you can be and how you can make, you know, those clients' resources work, again, to enhance the audience or the site experience.
Yeah, and I would just add, it's definitely not about size, but it's your work resonating with those corporations. So, for instance, we're hyper local, neighborhood focused. So And a lot of our content is focused on the south and west sides of Chicago, which are underserved and underrepresented. So is there a corporation that aligns and has those same goals and objectives as you do? And that's your shoo-in. So it doesn't necessarily have to be about size and how big or small your audience is. It's how your work is resonating with those corporations.
I want to add in one thing I just thought about. So I have the good fortune of working with Terry Quinn. She is our Chief Development Officer. And I think most of y'all probably have foundation funding. And one of the ways that I work with Terry is if she has a foundation, I mean, the difference really is I work with foundations too. When foundations want to do paid marketing or paid messaging or sponsor events, then they work directly with me. Terry's work is really bigger than that, right? They're funding, the overall organization or specific projects. But a lot of times she'll go on calls and she'll learn, oh, we've commissioned a poll, or we've done this research, or we have this white paper, and that light goes off in her head and she'll bring me in. Because what we'll do is that I will work with that foundation to share that work, via traditional ad placements. Again, that enhances the site experience, and the return is amazing. Our hope is really twofold. When she goes back, right, to renew the grant, we would have shown greater value. So hopefully we can ask for more. And for me, is what I've learned is when these foundations share research or polling results and things like that, it's really sticky. I worked with a foundation that promoted some work that they did on maternal mortality. And on the side, the gal called me and she goes, oh my God, those pages on our site, they're blowing up. Like that's where all the traffic is going. And the only place that we marketed this study is on the Texas Tribune. So what does that do? That gives me a story, right, to tell others. So when corporations are talking about polling, I can say, you're never going to believe this. I worked with, and this is what happened, right? So it's all about having those narratives, and they may come from different places. And maybe also the foundation in the future says, you were so kind to work with us on this. We're working on this study. And that becomes additional. Sometimes it's directly, they're paying then to market that study or the poll results or whatever it is. So think about your foundations that way too, because they have a lot to contribute.
That's a great question about foundations. We have a question in the chat. If you're a nonprofit, are these then sponsorships tax deductible like a donation would be? Could that be an angle with a potential supporter?
We get asked this question all the time, and we have an accounting firm that we work with. Advertising is a business expense, so it's written off anyway. I think where we get to, and you're going to find this, Maple, is if, like for your gala, let's say that you're selling tables, I'm making this up, for $10,000. I have some sponsors that come back to me and say, like they want you to say, and I can't even remember, there's a certain term for it. It's mainly in Terry's world, but like if they take food, that food is deducted from that $10,000, and they can only use that tax credit on the difference. I will tell you first, because we're a nonprofit, there kind of are these rules, and I watch if something is transactional on our site, for example, University of Texas Press or A&M Press, and they're directly selling a book, I identify that as a taxable program, and we pay taxes on that. So it kind of like it's kind of the purpose and where it links to and what happens there. Did I answer that? I don't know if I did or not.
Yeah, I think so. And that makes sense. And to that sense, if you're looking for 990s are also of other organizations are a great place to look to see what they're supporting and things like that. Another question in the chat, what policies do you have on political advertising and messaging? Do you allow it? Are there certain topics that are okay or not okay? How do you decide what is appropriate?
Is Chris from Fort Worth Report on the line? So he just asked me this question. The Tribune, we don't endorse candidates, and we don't do op-eds. We do have very strong political candidate criteria. No fundraising, no mudslinging. I'm happy to share. I shared it with him this week and he's like, oh my God, thank you so much. That's just not our world. If you're a candidate and you're advertising with us, we want you to tell us about you. The other thing too is the Tribune. We have the right not to publish any ads. We can just decide. And we have. I mean, we've sent back and just said we're not comfortable. It's written in our media kit. There's language there. It's never really been a problem, but I would say in the 14 years, we probably had 5 or 6 campaigns that we said we're not going to publish.
And I would just piggyback off of April. We're nonpartisan. And so we actually have guidelines on our site about what we will accept and not accept. We do not endorse any candidates. And for any reason at all, we can reject a sponsorship or an ad. And we have had opportunities where folks have reached out, and no bad blood by any means. They'll reach out and ask, oh, we're supporting this candidate for the mayoral race. Would you, advertise or sponsorship? And we just politely decline. And then they say thank you and move on.
I will take those ads, though, if they fit our criteria. And we have run some political candidate campaigns successfully.
Terrific. And just noting in the chat, Trish from Fort Worth Report said, Chris isn't here, but Fort Worth Report has decided against accepting partisan political ads this cycle. There are a couple questions here as well about specific projects, and especially if your news organization covers a niche topic in terms of how to potentially identify specific topics that may be of interest to supporters, or how you think about building, identifying whether it's a niche or a specific project, if that's okay, or if it seems like they're potentially endorsing the coverage, that type of thing. So Maple or April, I don't know if either of you have thought of that, especially with events or specific coverage of neighborhoods or things like that, but I'm curious your thoughts on that.
So we haven't delved into this too deeply. I can just give a broader perspective, which is the events that we've covered in the past have been project-based, depending on what we've done. So for instance, just before the pandemic, we hosted a free resource fair on the west side of Chicago. We brought together some of our local newsrooms, as well as 21 different organizations offering some sort of free resource. Again, this was free, so we didn't generate any revenue, but newsrooms were happy to be affiliated with this because we were another type of service beyond just our storytelling. We've had several panel discussions centered around what our readers deem to be important to them. And just before the pandemic, we held a back to school fair for organizations who were supporting remote learning for kids. And again, all of this is free. We do, looking ahead, be something we would consider project-based events that would generate revenue.
So for us, I mean, all of our events, with the exception of Trib Feast and the Texas Tribune Festival, open to the public, free to attend. We even create a festival within the festival called Open Congress that is open, and we market it for people to come to that. We never really want to put barriers between, everyday Texans and the information that we share. Our events are sponsored, though. I mean, that's a giant revenue opportunity for us. I mean, my events line goal is $2.5 million. And we acknowledge from the stage, our corporate sponsors, and we thank them, but we also make it very clear that the sponsors have no role in the topic, the panelist, or the conversation. And, in a sense, it really makes our corporate sponsors look even better. If we have a sponsored, like let's say it's CenterPoint Energy and one of their policy guys is on the stage, I do not allow CenterPoint Energy to sponsor. I don't want anyone to think that the reason why they're executive on the stage is because they're sponsoring, because that's just not true. They're on the stage because they're the right person to be on the stage. And so I tell CenterPoint Energy, you know what? Let's let the brand spotlight be on him, and let's take the dollars you would have invested in this event and let's add on somewhere else. So we kind of work like that. On projects and stuff where it might be, supported by or powered by, usually there's an intersection there. I think it might be really sticky though and we probably, I'm trying to think of if this is ever, because I'm really guarded about this. So if we were reporting a project on somebody specific, I would not want them to support or sponsor or power that either. It's just not necessary. Let them, rise or fall editorially in that space, and let's create something for their brand somewhere else.
Excellent. I think we'll have time for 2 more questions, one more from the chat, and then Philip, I see you raising your hand and we'll get to you shortly. In the Q&A, Pooja and Danny ask related questions. Pooja runs a health news publication that's massively syndicated, but is a for-profit. And so wondering if they convert to a nonprofit, whether that will have any benefit. And similarly, Danny's organization, The Jolt in Washington, is in the process of converting to a nonprofit, currently has a fiscal sponsor, but has seen some reluctance from one sponsor to a local bank that fiscal sponsorship wasn't enough. So curious from both of your perspectives, obviously you're both nonprofit organizations, but whether that is appealing to potential supporters in the corporate space.
So I'll go first. This is the only nonprofit I've ever worked at, and it's still a business. And so I don't really think about it being for-profit or nonprofit in the work that I do. It is mission focused and it's very rewarding. But again, at the end of the day, I just don't think like that. I'm more purpose driven in regards to what are their needs and goals, right? Desires, and creating something that is going to create success and a greater return on investment for them. I will tell you too that the Tribune partnered with Magid last year, and one of the things that we learned from our audience is that it doesn't seem like nonprofit really resonates with them. So we were surprised by that because we always talk about we're a nonprofit, nonpartisan, digital first news organization. That's just kind of scripted, and now we're looking to change our narrative because it just. Am I right, Emily? Am I saying the right thing?
Yeah, I think our current audience really appreciates the fact that we're nonprofit and we say we're nonpartisan, but if a potential future audience, we pulled Texas news consumers, they are saying, we'll decide if things are nonpartisan. We'll be the judge of whether you say you're a nonprofit, are you really independent? So like April, we don't, we're pretty agnostic when it comes to the business structure of an organization, and we think other people are leaning that way as well. Maple, do you find anything around that?
So I really can't speak for-profit, but what I will say is I don't think I would get too hung up on that. I think that just goes back to what I was saying earlier about your work resonating with these corporate sponsors, because I feel like at the end of the day, maybe the nonprofit model doesn't work for some other corporate sponsors, so I think it's just your work resonating with them and then who will support you.
I've never had a corporate sponsor that says I'm bringing you all my money because you're a nonprofit. I wish, but
yeah, so true.
Excellent. And Philip, last question to you.
Hi, there's a lot of wonderful information being shared here and lots of great seeds for thoughts, but it seems the more that I listen to it and the more I'm understanding and hearing about the nuances, for example, nonprofit publications have sometimes greater access to grants because a lot of organizations won't give to for-profits. They have to pay taxes on it. It seems like that for a lot of smaller publications, such as ourselves, Q Voice News, and we also cover a marginalized community. We're a digital first publication covering the LGBTQ community in the Los Angeles area. The more nuanced it seems that I'm hearing and thinking, the more it feels like we're almost on the hamster wheel running in circles, and we never have a chance to get off of that wheel, or we're always on the outside looking in because we don't have the large staffs, the large resources. Sometimes we are encountering, homophobia in terms of folks not wanting to either work with us or do advertising or whatnot. And so, congrats to the Texas Tribune and the Chicago group. But it seems like a lot of us, like I said, are on the outside looking in, being like, hey, how can we get there? Where's the assistance for us? We hear so much conversation about how vital local news is and how it's a lifeline to these, to communities and to neighborhoods and to people. But for a lot of the options that are being discussed, and again, congratulations being able to achieve this, a lot of us just are not able to get there or to get access to those resources, to that funding. So where's that? I guess that's kind of a complicated question, I understand.
Hey, no, we're all on that hamster wheel. We're right there with you. I'm telling you, there's never.
I mean, let me just be. I mean, to be fair, we're not. You're talking about a $5 million. You're looking to raise 5 million, 2.5 million. You guys have development folks. We have none of that. So if you're on the hamster wheel, you're probably 3 or 4 miles ahead of us. We're not. We're definitely not in the same.
Yeah.
And we're a marginalized publication dealing with the LGBTQ community, which. So
yeah, but understand exactly who you are, the audience you represent. And if I were you, because we all suffer from time poverty. Oh, by the way, that 5 million is just me. That doesn't include development. And so I have to be very wise with my time as well. So Philip, what I would say to you is know your audience, know your content, look for corporations that are already spending in this space. I mean, be very targeted. I mean, if you put your email address, or maybe we have it in the thing, I'll help. I'll be your eyes and ears. Because there are a lot of organizations and a lot of corporations that are looking just for you. And I think that's you just going to have to be, I mean, the old days, I would say, don't be a shotgun, be rifle, right? But that analogy doesn't work anymore. So I just say, just be very, very focused on who will align with your content and want your audience.
And I would just, again, piggyback off of April here. I joined Block Club 4 years ago. Prior to me joining Block Club, they had 5 reporters and 3 editors. They had no development director, nothing. So they were literally like ground up trying to figure it out. Where do we go? What are we doing? We don't have foundation support. We were exactly where you were. And so I really think it's crucial, incredibly crucial, to think about your work. I've said it time and time again. If your work resonates with the community, founders or foundations, individual donors, major gifts, any of the ways that you can receive funding, if your work resonates with them, they will support your work. And that's how Block Club has been able to achieve all that they've been able to do. Because when I go and talk to these foundations, when I talk to major donors, individual donors, it's always about our work, nothing else. Yes, they have, we're now building a revenue team, but before that revenue team, all they had that spoke to anyone was the work and what they were doing in the community. So I just encourage so many levels to advocate for your work. Find those who believe in your mission, who believe in your goals, and will fall in place. So Philip, we were there. We totally get it. Just focus, guns blazing on your work.
I have a question too. I can relate to what Philip was saying. We're a very small office at Solar today, and I basically only have 5 hours a week of paid time during which I can do fundraising. And we have some college or graduate student interns helping us, but they don't have previous fundraising experience. So, and they also have very limited time to spend on this, on raising money for the publication. So given that we only have basically 5 hours of time per week, what would you suggest that we focus on?
In terms of fundraising, what do you typically spend those 5 hours on, Kat? The 5 hours you give to fundraising, what do you focus on?
A combination of sending correspondence to existing donors, contacting foundations that might be interested, and now contacting business members of our association, and potentially also this month, I'm starting to contact businesses that might be interested in supporting us by inviting them to join the association and or support the magazine.
I think you're doing everything right. I would just encourage you with those 5 hours. If there's one specific area, so if that's donors, specifically focus on donors. If you feel like that's the biggest way that you can generate revenue for the time being, then that's where your focus should be. If you feel like you can focus more time on foundations, focus your time on foundations. But it sounds like what you're doing is right. And if you feel like for whatever reason that's not working, shift your priorities and figure out what will bring in the most revenue with that time you've allotted.
Yeah, and I say maximize your time too, with call to actions that may have great reach through your products. And really, I mean, I think Maple's right. You're going to have to focus, because if not, you're going to be all over the place, and it's going to be difficult.
And what do you mean by calls to action? Sorry to interrupt.
So, I mean, do you have, I mean, for like at the Tribune, we may send an email about, in fact, we did, I think today, our editor-in-chief sent about a series in East Texas that we're doing on women's health and access to healthcare, and he kind of showcased the work and then asked people to support it.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Yeah, we have call to actions, you know, we'll use a specific day or time or an event, and we'll crowdfund, right? I mean, those might take a little bit more time, but your reach and see, you know, if you can get community sharing, and then you're bringing more and more people to your party and giving. We also, I mean, you could do call to actions on your site. I mean, we have certain time periods where we'll have like a zombie bar or, you know, a click to give, or, you know, those type of things as well.
Yeah, we just put in a pop-up.
Great. Yeah, that's one thing I would like to see the Tribune do. I would like to have us, like, you've read 8 articles this week. Please support our newsroom. I mean, we still want to try things that we've never done. But I mean, I think it is just about trial, but anything, because your time is limited, right? And your staff is limited. Try to use the bigger reach opportunities that you have.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Kat, and thank you, Philip, for that question as well. I think it's a hugely important conversation, and one we hope that this can be the start, and the start of resources in a place where folks can come to learn best practices, and we can certainly share more. And we can have 2 more sessions coming up over the next 2 weeks that we hope will be terrifically useful as well. Next week, we have Johanna Derlega, who's the Chief Revenue Officer at the 19th, also a team of 1, although at a bigger organization as well. She's talking about how to build an internal culture, how to maximize resources internally, and how to coordinate with your newsroom and on the editorial side to make sure that these are corporate opportunities that work for your newsroom. So she's outstanding, and that'll be a really excellent conversation as well. But I wanted to say thank you, everyone, for being here. In particular, thank you, Maple, thank you, April, thank you, Emily, for leading a really wonderful conversation. We'll share the recording with everyone. We'll share some of the resources that everyone mentioned during the chat as well. We'll share contact information for RevLab and Block Club if you guys have more questions also. And this will all come directly from me. So please, if anyone else has any questions or any other feedback for how we can make these sessions more useful, please reply to those emails. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Yossi.
Thank you.